Today I'm talking to Sy Choudhury, Director of Business Development and Partnerships for AI at Meta. He works at the intersection of product engineering and industry partners, the folks who help bring AI to life in products like Instagram Reels. And he's been really close to Meta's open approach with Llama. He grew up in Dhaka and upstate New York, studied electrical engineering at the state of New York in Buffalo, and previously built tech companies like Qualcomm before moving into partnerships. So this was a really good conversation. We got into how recommendation models actually work and why learning how things work beats cramming for tests, social media's upsides and downsides, and his advice for teens trying to find their superpower. So this was a really good conversation, and I hope you enjoy. Thank you again so much for coming on to have a conversation with me. So I guess sort of just like starting off, could you just tell me a little bit more about like what you do, what keeps you busy, how you spend your spare time, and like kind of like what the most exciting part is about the work that you do?
Cool. Yeah, totally. So my name is Sy Choudhury. I am a director of business development and partnerships for AI here at Meta. And obviously, as you know, AI is really, really big and popular and very topical in this day and age. But at Meta, we've been working, Meta used to be Facebook, right? We've been working in the area of AI for now over 12 years, right? And so even though it's kind of new to a lot of consumers, it's been the way a lot of our products work, right? And so, like for example, if you're scrolling on Instagram, that feed is powered by a machine learning model just for you individually. And similarly, if you're getting ads, that there's models there. Of course, these days with things like ChatGPT or our own Llama, there's everybody knows about LLMs, language models. But in any of the case, all the work that our product and engineering folks do, whenever they work with any third party, any partner, technology partner or otherwise, that's where my team gets involved with. So we help like kind of help work with engineers on both sides to kind of design, hey, how are we going to work together? Kind of design the plan, the project plan, right? And then even like sometimes you have to put together legal agreements of what you're going to do, et cetera. And then the teams start working together, eventually it launches a feature. And so my team is now 24 people and used to be seven, but it keeps growing with all the stuff that we do with in AI, which is pretty exciting. So yeah, it's AI has been really super interesting for a while. And that's what keeps me so interested to be really at one of the few companies in the world that's not just using AI, but actually making the core AI systems that other people and that we use. So really being at the ground floor is pretty exciting.
Yeah, and I think that's really cool how like honestly, well, when I think about AI, I think about different platforms that all incorporate AI as part of like their service, but I never really think about like who's actually behind the creation of these models.
Mhm.
So that's
Yeah,
that's
no,
honest.
yeah,
Yeah.
indeed. So, and our model our model has a fun name, Llama. It started from large language model meta AI, so LLMA. But Llama is akin to what you might want to think of, like Anthropic has models, OpenAI has the GPT models, et cetera. So it's a core component. But yeah, we're one of the unique things that we do, and it was kind of well, one of the really cool parts that I've been involved with was the discussion and the decision to provide that model openly. So we don't make money on that model. We use it ourselves, but we wanted to really democratize the AI, and so we provide it kind of as open source to the rest of the industry. So you have companies like Spotify who are using that model, or there's a family of models for like their AI DJ feature, as an example. Or you have others like LinkedIn who you can rewrite your job description by using under the hood Llama. And so it's cool because we not only kind of build the core technology, use the core technology, but also kind of partner with other companies who get to use the core technology. Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, and I guess like more on that, I guess how would you sort of describe your college experience and like kind of like when you knew what kind of career you wanted to pursue?
Yeah. there were two careers that I wanted to do, and they're still like very near and dear to my heart. One I wanted to be a car designer,
Mhm.
and partially a lot because of like the transportation design part, not really the engineering part of it. The shape, the lines, et cetera. That was one real passion, still is actually a passion, just things automotive. And the second was like also was kind of independent of that, really how things work. And so interestingly, more around like electronics and like how does the stereo system work and taking that apart and things like that and putting it back together. And back in the day, you used to have these giant cassette players and receivers and things like that. And so that latter is what is eventually became my kind of college experience in the sense that I did my undergrad at University of Buffalo, which is the SUNY State University of New York system, Buffalo. And so I did that in electrical engineering. And so back in the day, and still a little bit today, like electrical engineering has a fair amount of like how hardware works, like chips and design electronic boards and things, but also how software works to control all that. As I did that, I really actually, believe it or not, I really did try to also work on a portfolio to apply to car design school independent of the going through college. That latter part didn't work out. Long story, my portfolio got lost at one point. It was heartbreaking for me, and it really changed my career trajectory. But luckily, I was still going to school, and I had just graduated with an electrical engineering degree. And so, if anything, that has been great because that is what led me to a job, in engineering that led me to, frankly, it's interesting if starting and really knowing the hardware has led me to understand roles where I was an engineer actually doing the coding for many, many years and things like that. I was doing coding and working on hardware designs, first at a medical electronics company. Then later, I joined a company called Qualcomm. They make some of the chips for mobile phones. And then here at Meta for many years ago. But the thing that my undergrad really, really, doing an electrical engineering degree, it has like if you translate that to now, is really what one of the things that my big takeaway is I actually understand how things work from the ground up. Like when I'm talking to, even though I'm on a business role, I'm talking to the engineers, like I can understand like what the chips are doing, what the software underneath that, let's say, runs the models, like the little software engines that runs the models themselves, how they're working, and the data that's going through it to make the whole experience work, right? Because you hear about GPUs, but above GPUs, there's this thing called a model framework. There's the models, and then the data going through, like your prompt is how the whole thing works, right? But it was because I learned kind of very low level nuts and bolts of electrical engineering that I can understand all the layers. And it's really helped me and it helps me every day. Even when I'm doing like essentially at the end of the day, business deals with other companies of how we're going to work together.
Yeah, so like kind of like that, the fundamental knowledge about like how it actually like the technical aspects of how it works, kind of using that to influence your strategic perspectives with like the company and with the business.
Yeah. Yeah. And knowing like what, how, what's really important, what's doable. Also, really, one of the things I'd say is you gain so much trust and credibility, both with the engineers inside my own company, like that, hey, this is a business person that actually knows their stuff of when what matters to me or not. And also like when we're talking to the partner side, right? Like partnership is about a win-win from two companies working together to make something happen. And so you know how much you can push or not push, right? If this is like, oh, that's going to be really take them a ton of engineering time to do, they're going to push back, right? Versus, oh yeah, that's really an easy, they should be able to give on that. And so knowing the detail is actually helpful really for both credibility and just even just getting my day-to-day work done. So
Yeah, and like sort of like in similar vein to that, and kind of engaging with more of like the cultural perspective,
mhm.
how would you say that like just like your fundamental knowledge of like how these mechanics work, how these systems work, influenced like how you sort of think about things from the business level? how would you say that maybe like some of your like South Asian cultural lessons growing up kind of affected how you think about like your job and like the decisions you make when you're providing your opinion, when you're like providing oversight?
Yeah, so one of the things that we grew up with. So I was born in Dhaka, Bangladesh, and I was raised. I lived there till age 7 before my family emigrated. First temporarily, my dad was going to go to college or do his grad degree here, and then ended up staying the whole 9 yards. But one of the things they really instilled in all of us was not just education for education's sake, but to really understand how things work, not just get through the books. Don't just get through the books to take a test. And so that was really important because that was very culturally driven into me about not only as an immigrant, but also as just the way our family operated was learn to really learn. And this is one of the reasons why I think I actually really learned things in college instead of just take tests. Sure, there were some classes there I was less interested in, but in the side and electrical engineering, I really wanted to learn what was going on, and that is directly affects even what I do every day now. Like I voraciously like to read. It's interesting nonfiction stuff of how stuff works or what happened in history, and I watch a lot of YouTube shorts just because things like, hey, I'm learning about this, or even if you
I
watch.
know they teach something like crazy in like 30 seconds.
Yeah, in 30 seconds, or like this, how this building is being developed, you know what I mean? Or frankly, even watching travel logs, there's really, you're learning about going to a place. Yeah, sure, it's a little bit of it's fun, it's more casual, but you're learning. And so yeah, I think that really culturally, one of the big takeaways I see a lot in South Asian families, kids, etc., is like an emphasis on learning, but really an emphasis on really learning to internalize, not just learning to, pass a test.
Yeah, and I think I'm honestly very similar in that way that like I love to just like for me it's like geography and political things and like current events and news and like basketball and stuff. I love just consuming loads of information of that because I just like to know these certain things. I just like having all these facts in my brain.
Yeah, and also like, you can piece together the first of all, you have fun facts out of it, but you can piece together interesting bits of like even why things work a certain way, right?
Yeah, and just it's just good for like any discussion, anything if you want to like bring up a point, anything. Like I do debates, so it's really good for me to know like different sociological aspects in the world and different like I guess geographical things. So it's
Yep.
definitely really helpful. I think that value of like knowing the why behind things, and that's actually I agree with you. It's very like it's very South Asian at core. Is kind of learning things, not just so that you can like verbatim copy it from your head onto the test paper, but just know it so that you can understand it, understand how it works, and apply it in different areas.
Yep. No, indeed.
And I think like I guess like so you grew up, did you grow up or did you grow up in Bangladesh or did you move to
Yeah, so I grew up in Dhaka, which is the capital city of Bangladesh, till age 7, and then my dad was doing his master's at Harvard, so we were there for a year and a half, and then after that he ended up becoming an academic, and so he was a professor at Syracuse University. This is the reason we were in upstate New York, Syracuse, Syracuse is about like a 5 hour drive away from New York City proper, right? And that's really where I grew up. So since from age, whatever, 10 to till post high school. And I went to school at Buffalo. That wasn't that far away, like a 3 hour drive. So upstate New York was really, prior to moving out to California, was really from my youth, my entire existence.
yeah, so I guess how would you sort of describe that experience growing up in Syracuse, New York, as a South Asian American kid? Like what was school like? What was something that your non-South Asian friends would find like fascinating whenever they came to your house?
Well, so Syracuse was and still is like a big small city. It's not really a big city, nor is it a town, right? And so it has enough people from a diaspora of South Asia, or East Asia, or even Europe, to that matter. But because it's a university town, there was a lot more kind of acceptance of people from all around the world there, and so friends would come by and be very interested in what I was having for dinner, etc. Like, of course, is rice and lentils is such a common staple to have with everything, and they would always comment like, "You guys have that every day with other stuff?" Yes, yeah, we do with chicken or with something else. But on the flip side, it also just being South Asian was also a lot of people would also be very friendly because they were also from an immigrant area. Like one of my good friends was from Iowa, but my other good friend was a Korean kid. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Sankey Choi. I remember him well. So that was very cool. I will say that the overall community was very, very friendly. I mean, our economic stature being grad student, my parents being grad students, and then just starting off was not that great. And so we'd buy secondhand clothes all the time. And a lot of the secondhand clothes they were buying were like 70s. This was not the 70s. And like, but this was like 70s garb, like this kind of John Travolta, like staying alive. And so I was probably the most poorly dressed kid at school, my sister and I. But, we made it work. So.
Yeah, so I guess so it was less like unknown and more and like isolated and more like this is cool. I've never seen this before, like appreciative of each
Yeah,
other's
yeah, indeed. Like
diversity.
because we were in a pretty a pretty not large, but like medium large university and university town, it was more accepting to people from South Asia and otherwise otherwise like if you ended up I don't know in Cincinnati or some some other town of the same kind of size.
Yeah. So I guess what made you move to the Bay Area? Like was it just sort of like career focused or was it something else about like sort of
Yeah,
the area?
yeah, there was a couple of things. One was really kind of you'll chuckle. It's is really simple and shallow. Growing up watching TV, you see tons of movies about California, and California is the dream. Is the palm trees and the great weather, and especially growing up in Syracuse, it is cold and cloudy a lot, and during the winter, boy, the snow comes at you sideways. So. I really had a resolve that as soon as I was going to finish undergrad, I wanted to just put everything in my car and go somewhere to California. And of course, and that's exactly what I did. Now, I thought I might want to end up in LA, et cetera, but even though internally, even back then, the tech industry was pretty big in Silicon Valley, right? This is companies like HP and Intel and whatever have been around for a while. So I knew I'd probably end up in the Bay Area to start and then eventually move to LA. But I got to the Bay Area. It's this awesome place to live. There are a lot of cool jobs here. And so I never did go to LA. And by the way, I'm glad I didn't go to LA because such a different vibe down there now that I live here. And frankly, it is so warm compared to the East Coast still, as far as, or not, it's not warm, inclement. And so I love the weather. I love the weather. I love the people. It's a great, great place to live. But yes, I kind of wanted to get out of the dreary weather. And I think I was influenced by TV, much like people might be influenced by a Instagram short or Instagram reel these days. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, weather's a great reason, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, we're very lucky to live in a wonderful place for that.
Yeah, and I guess so what would you say is like different about like your experience raising your kids in the Bay Area, like from the parent perspective versus like sort of your personal experience growing up, like across the country.
Yeah, I mean, I think look, there's so much more that we can and do that's outside, right? I mean, in Syracuse, we spent a lot of the winter inside doing inside stuff, right? But here, there's so many like things you literally can, walk, go for a bike ride, a hike, or walk the dog, etc. Go putt-putt golfing 24/7 out of the year type of thing. And so that's pretty cool. Also, we live close enough to the mountains in Tahoe and even close enough to the beach where, there you don't have that. You have hills and you have lakes, right? And so that's pretty cool, like to be where I think there's just much more access to the wild nature, let's say, that you just don't have on that part of the East Coast. And so I think my two sons are very blessed to have like just a much grander sketchboard, so to speak, from which to explore from than we did. But it's okay. Now, having said that, back in the day, also we didn't have phones, right? Never mind cell phones. We didn't have cell phones, so you had to go outside and do stuff. Where, of course. a lot of times, all of us, myself included, find myself staring at my phone, whether you're outside or inside. So, times change, but there's, I think, a much more interesting things to do in the Bay Area.
Yeah, and I guess more on that phone part because I think you and I are similar in that we both see a lot of value in like specifically like short social media bites as ways to gain information, as ways to like learn new things about the world. But sort of on the opposite end of that, would you say that the increase of social media in our lives has like had a negative effect on how like certain groups in America are perceived, such as like the increase in hate on X towards South Asian Americans, stuff like that? Like, would you say that like that is sort of like because of the increase of social media, or is that sort of like a deeper thing that's just
Yeah,
being channeled through that?
yeah. I mean, I think social media has, as a tool, has made it much easier for people to connect, and that connection can be used in a positive way, and sometimes that connection is unfortunately used in kind of to amplify negative things as well, right? And so it's a little bit like having, any new tool, whether you're talking about whether you have rudimentary things like sticks and knives, all the way through to mechanics tools, all the way through to the computer, right? And interconnectiveness. And now today, of course, things like social media on top of that. I do think these tools, frankly, the next wave of tools is AI and generative AI, right? At the end of the day, all of these things can be really thought about as tools. And for the larger part, they actually have a good outcome. I mean, I end up using social media to really stay in touch with so many friends that I, have moved to different parts of the world through the years. But it's also a negative in that, some people can use it for a negative purpose. I think one of the things we're starting to see, though, I mean, like we meaning here at work at Meta, and I actually see it as well, is, you see how groups of friends and users are using messaging platforms as like their more tight social media, so to speak, right? So it's interesting because messaging has become so like for example, obviously Meta is also one of our services is WhatsApp, right? The most popular messaging platform in the world. And it's amazing how many WhatsApp groups I'm in, right? And that's kind of like my micro social media versus when I post to Instagram, which is like my medium because it's usually shorts and things, versus what I post to Facebook, I usually post long form, like a whole trip, like what I did, right? So I even use these tools in a different way and, for what I need to. And I think a lot of folks have started to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think so. You have like a really unique perspective, and like as like someone who works at Meta and like sees these diagnostics and stuff.
Yeah.
So would you say that like WhatsApp is sort of become its own like WhatsApp and like other messaging platforms have become sort of like their own subset? I know there's Facebook Messenger as well,
That's right. Yeah.
have
Yeah.
become their own like subset of social media where people like who are closer kind of just interact.
Yeah, absolutely, exactly. I mean, it's really at the end of the day, it's like a private social messaging. Sorry, it's a private social group or a private or more private social group than a public one and a larger one, right? Whether it's posted online, obviously things like WhatsApp and now Facebook Messenger are encrypted and they're private to those who are a participant. But you can almost think of like in Instagram or even when you're posting to YouTube, right? It's like you're typically in a larger group, but you're also making it public. And so it's becoming very much shades of gray. And this is one of the reasons why it's kind of a little bit shades of gray to that same experience. And yeah, and one of the things that like again, as you said, from the inside, you can see is that the number of people in a group has typical people in a group, an average, has grown quite a bit for a typical WhatsApp user, and that's kind of reflective of that. People are more inclined to have a WhatsApp group of like 20 people or 15 people. Before it used to just be like one or two. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. People are more inclined to like put themselves out there and communicate and use and actually use these apps as not just for like consumption but also production and
That's right. Yeah, and, creating their own commentary, I think is the right way to say it, right?
yeah. Yeah, totally. I think that's great. And I think also like the increase of Instagram Reels and its like effect on what like trends and like pop culture and like different like news and stuff. I think most people, especially my age, use things like Instagram Reels to get a lot of their info. And a lot of people, all their current events is just from like little like graphics or like 5-second bits. And I think that honestly, a lot of people say that that's like, oh, it's like rotting your brain or it's addictive. But I think honestly, like if you're going to consume news, if you're going to consume information, if you do it in a fast way that allows you to like just be walking and on your phone, you see it real quickly. I think that's like very good way to manage your time and learn things while also like going about your day.
Yeah, no, indeed. And matter of fact, this is one of the it's funny you say that because there's always this balance when like for example our Reels the Reels feature, let's say by and large, has machine learning models behind it. And because I know that we partner with a few hardware companies to make sure that runs really efficiently and fast. But those models are very different than your recommendation models that you're getting just within the feed itself because the recommendation models can be a little bit more linear and focused on you. But those models in Reels have to be more about not just what they have to balance between what you're interested in and what might be topically interesting in the world or within your region. And then recommend a kind of based on that subset. And so, yeah, coming full circle back to the where we started with talking about AI is that like even if you get that right, then a user like you or me will actually kind of engage and actually value it, right? Versus just be like, this is giving me too much garbage or stuff I'm not interested in, right?
Yeah, so like sort of maximizing the amount of interaction and maximizing like the value that someone gets from seeing something based
Exactly.
on
Exactly. Yep. Yep.
based on a variety of factors. And I think that's really amazing. And sort of to sort of wrap things up, what would you say like if you're having a conversation with your 16-year-old self in Syracuse or just any like South Asian American kid, what advice or thoughts would you have for them?
Well, I think speaking a little bit to what we were talking about, number one, of course, you should, everyone says follow your passion, but it's really what that means is really learn what your superpower is, like what you're really good at, and partially what you're good at, you're gonna get good at is if you're really interested in it, right? People say follow your passion, but it's really if something's interesting to you, you can do well at it. And there are people from all industries of the world who do well at something. You don't have to be like the tech coder or work in finance or like be on the Hollywood cover, right? If you're good at something, you're interested in something, really just kind of double click on that, focus on that. And like, especially nowadays, in order to the individual using and having augmented, I'd say, with tools like the computer and cloud connectivity and tools like LLMs and AI and those models, right? You can actually achieve a lot as a one person. You can what you couldn't. So, but whether it's that world or even the physical world, like maybe you want to start a plumbing company, right? I would say is that following your interest and just really knowing, back to a little bit of knowing, learning the stuff in that interest, like inside out, being the best at it is probably what the advice I would have given my 16-year-old self. Actually, a little bit of that perhaps my parents already gave me, but I would have told my 16-year-old self that my parents were right. So double click on it, so to speak.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah. So like trust what your parents say.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but I wouldn't say it so broadly, but in this case, yes, definitely trust what your parents say, and because learning to really understand was what has really helped shape my career and still does, as I mentioned to you, literally every day. Like it still helps me every single day here at Meta.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think understanding something will do way more than just get you 100 on the test. It'll
That's right. Yep.
help you
Exactly.
apply it everywhere.
That's
So
right. Yep. Absolutely.
thank you so much again for coming on and having a conversation with me.
Yeah. Thank you, Shu. We'll talk to you sometime in the future.
Yep.